I've played on rental sets. When I go, once in a while, I'll go up to Drum Workshop, is the maker of the drum set, and they live just an hour away from my home in California. So sometimes I'll go up there just to play for a day, and I'll set up any old thing. And I like to play unfamiliar drum sets, actually, and they're tuned in a way I wouldn't tune them, and it makes me play a little differently. So I'm wide open to that, and I could make a record on any old drum set. It's remarkable how it's always going to be me. The cymbals are actually a Canadian company, Sabian, and I went to their factory in the early 2000s and experimented with creating my own voice of cymbals with the alchemists and metal beaters there. And it's quite a medieval craft, the making of cymbals, and infinitely variable in turning on lathes and hammering with, guys hammering with hammers there. So the line of them is called Paragon, which literally means a perfect diamond, but they were designed for me as musical cymbals of ride and crash variety, as well as the effects cymbals, so-called, of China types and splash cymbals and so on. So yeah, that was wonderful working with the actual people who make them and finding out what every change to the instrument did to the sound, and then learning to mold that into something that pleased just me and hopefully lots of other people too. Cymbals being made of metal have many different voices, many different presences, and sometimes they're an accompaniment like the ride cymbal or the hi-hat, other times they're punctuation like a crash cymbal, or a short punctuation or a long. That's why you choose different sizes of crash cymbals. The ones to my right are called China type cymbals, and I hear them in Chinese opera traditionally, actually they're used, and quite a trashy sort of sound, no offense, but they can be tuned for a very short decay or a nice long white noise sort of swell. And then certain parts during our show, my drum set revolves 180 degrees, and it's centered around then an electronic setup of Roland V drums. And these are all triggering mostly analog samples, sometimes of old drum sets that I've had, sometimes of other percussion instruments. In one case, back in the early days in the 1980s of electronic drums, where they had a pretty lame sound, I sampled my voice singing what I wanted. I want this tom-tom to sound like doo, doo, and I want this one to go boom, boom. And I sampled that, and so when I triggered that, I'd be playing doo, 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 of me, a sample of my voice. And you can break down my setup to a basic 4-drum setup. What I started with 3 drums, actually. Snare drum, tom-tom, bass drum, hi-hat, and maybe add a floor tom over there. That was my next optional extra. But really everything I do can be broken down to that, and I could happily play all day on any kind of music with those 4 drums. The difference of tonalities, we have the upper toms, 1, 2, 3, that have higher voices, and they're arranged down conversationally because they follow the drum fills, follow the toms down typically, although I will make an exception and try hard to reverse them. And a couple of times I've had that opportunity and just loved it as a drummer to be able to go up the toms. But they're a set of voices, and they're tuned to very specific notes and intervals that, in fact, there are 4 of mine I can play the Jeopardy theme on perfectly. To my left, I have an xylophone type keyboard percussion trigger that sometimes is like the chorus of Spirit of Radio. It plays the bells in there. Other times it's a marimba for soloing. Sound effects, I'll put a whole selection of sound effects on there. And there's another electronic trigger in the middle of my acoustic drums. There are foot triggers for electronic samples that I set off. And even from the electronic kit, I can reach lots of acoustic stuff. So I can get to a real snare drum, a real tom-tom, and real cymbals, because as fun as electronic drums are and as much versatility as they have now, and the surface even is quite nice to play on, but it can never have the dynamics of moving air that real drums and cymbals can have. So it's the combination of them that gives me the dynamism of acoustic drums, and then the rich, a virtual orchestra of sounds that the electronic drums can offer. So each of them is a tool as part of the sound palette to be applied to do the job necessary.
Hey, I'm Tom Power. Thanks so much for watching our video. I do want to let you know that you can watch one video there, watch another video right there. You can subscribe by clicking that button and leave a comment down below. We'll see you later.